Hey, Drew.
It's happy hour, and since you can't drink,
You guys sure?
we've brought our own glasses.
Are you guys fucking kidding? What? The Casa Amigos?
Hey, you don't need this anymore.
You guys are awful people.
Happy Friday.
Cheers, Plotkin.
Weekend.
Sober.
That's tasty.
Mm-hmm.
My bar
And as a
card.
matter of fact, we're
That's my
gonna,
bar card.
I'm gonna slide this out this way.
Oh, there we go. Bye, Drew. Have a good weekend, all right?
I'm just, wait a minute. That is not making me not want to do some old bad habits there, Rob.
Oh, there's no problem, Bobby. Here, see. Just,
Be nice, or I will send you to a meeting. Yes. I'm just saying, it's like not the type of thing where I thought we'd sit down and you'd start snorting stuff. I didn't know that was.
I have allergies, and without a Vicks Vapor thing, I have a hard time. Plus, if I showed you my nose in real life, you'd be like, "Oh my God, cocaine's cut with acetone." I basically ate my whole face. There's nothing left here.
Who was that comedian recently? I think it was a comedian who's like he has the photos out now where he's showing like his nose is like
Artie Lang.
Oh my God! Yeah. Have you seen those fit pictures? So what did they do?
They reconnect your septum, but my nose is still bending. There's nothing left in my nose, and I've had 3 surgeries. And it's so. But after the first surgery, my father, rest his soul, said, "Your eyes are crying blood, and your nose is like you have the strip off." And my dad is staring at me, and he said, "Your face looks like a can of squashed assholes." It was bad news bears. So when did we start?
So we're always rolling. I mean, we, like I said to you the other day when you reached out and we started chatting, I said, yeah, I'd love to have you on the podcast. But I said, as long as you're authentic and don't bullshit and say everything. And you're like, and I'm like, hey, and you can curse, speak how you normally speak. You know, oh, it's not gonna be a fucking problem the way I fucking talk. And I'm like, all right. Authentic's not gonna be an issue for Bob. So Bob, you and Rob Ford, who, if people remember, was the mayor of Toronto,
right?
And he was caught on tape, some pictures where he was smoking crack with some cats and stuff. And then you were dispatched. You were the man. Tell me that story, how you got introduced to Rob Ford and what happened.
So what happened with Rob basically was people had tape of him, and there was more than one tape. And apparently they were able to squash the first one, and he denied. And then the second time he got set up by his own sister in his sister's basement, and they weren't able to. So at that point he went into treatment. When he went into treatment, the treatment center,
what did they get him? They got tape of him doing what? It was smoking crack or?
Smoking crack. Yeah.
Okay.
Smoking crack. And it was sad because it was his own sister who sold him out.
Maybe she was doing it as an intervention, or no, it was not like from an intervention.
No, this family put the fun in dysfunction. It was sad, but he was a great dude. When I went to go work with him, I was more for optics. They were like, well, bring in this guy. I think the treatment center had managed so poorly that he had barely done any work in treatment. And they interviewed a whole bunch of people. It wasn't just like, let's just call Bob. There was a whole bunch of people interviewed. I've gone to interview for executives and stuff. I've never had, like the director of the clinical director was telling me, we need to be ready for him. This and that. Like, look, I've done this. Why they were telling me that is that he was loaded while he was in treatment.
So so Rob Ford you're the sober coach, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Yep. You're the sober coach. They're bringing you in to meet with Rob Ford, Toronto mayor's in treatment. And in treatment, he's loaded?
Rob used to inside baseball. He was well known, and people were there was some good security. They were throwing liquor over the fence, and he had a spot, and he'd go get it.
I remember at the time when this story came out, and I had no idea who you were back then, but when this story hit, what everyone remembers is he's a big man. Oh. His skin was very red. He was like always dripping sweat. I mean, it looked like the epitome of like, John Belushi and Chris Farley rolled into one, but he's the mayor. And I remember he gets busted smoking crack a few different times. And then someone asks him, about having a drug problem or something. And he says, I don't have a drug problem. And they said, but you were smoking crack. He goes, yeah, but I don't have a drug problem. Something to that effect. I mean, and anyone had to look at this guy. If you're the sober coach coming in, you got to be looking at this like, man, this is a bit of an uphill battle, huh?
first of all, when I first came in, I've said this before, but he didn't want anything to do with me. He was just like, oh, this guy's really here. It was like, I'm waiting outside of his house. He wouldn't even let me in his house. It's like, okay. And then he realized by day 2, it might come in handy because he had to come out and come public. He comes out on the 30th of June. July 1st is Canada Day, our Independence Day. Well, we're not independent. Canada was forged out of a railroad, but that's a different story altogether.
Didn't even know you guys were a country until Adrian told me that, our creative director, and she gets really pissed when I slam on Canada. But now that you're a Canadian, I can do that times 2.
Okay. Well, that's good for me. Like I said, here we are on we are July 10th, and there was 148 COVID cases in a country of 38 million yesterday. How are we doing now?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah. And I think that understanding Rob again would be, when I first met him, he didn't want anything to do with me. And I don't think he had ever had a friend. We became tight. And what's interesting, I'd never been around politicians before, but when you have his ear, you're the guy. So all the other people, the court jesters, if you will, all these other staff are like, who the hell is this guy? We have this 18 event July 1st. People are heckling him. I've never had a guy come out of treatment and people are saying, you're a crackhead, resign, this and that. This man just got out of treatment. He's in the early stages, and the strategists and stuff for the party are telling him, we need to avert this. I said, you need to own this. You need to be in front of it. You need to say to yourself, I am an addict. I'm in new recovery, and you need to own it. And they were like, oh, the optics are terrible. Well, he started doing interviews, and they were teeing off on him beyond belief. Nasty questions. You don't ask that, but he was fair game. It was kind of a feeding frenzy on him. So I was like, okay, on this, there was a second day of interviews. I said, this is it. This man's in new recovery. This is a disease, not a moral failing. Leave him alone. And I said, we're done. And the guy that ran his media stuff was like, are you insane? You can't do this. And Rob was like, yeah, I'm not doing any more of these things. He's right, because these people are that. So we had this really interesting relationship that grew because we became friends. They kept me there in the public eye for 2 weeks. Day 6, there's a guy heckling him. He accuses me of kicking him in a media scrum. I swear it, I never laid a hand on him. Everyone goes, okay, Bob, you can tell me the truth. No, never laid a hand on him. I wake up on the 7th. I'm on the cover of every newspaper in Toronto, which is the 4th biggest city in North America, the biggest one in Canada, but it was surreal. I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is who I am. The Mayor Ford sober coach kicks protester. That's what they were saying. And he was really good to me. He said, nobody died. Let's get the media cycle will spin you out in 24 hours. We're just going to stay the course. He worked out every day. He was like a machine. And for a big man, he was like twinkle toes. He could really move. I was stunned at how quick he could move. And the adversity, this guy would walk into places and people were in his face, yelling at him, screaming. And he'd go, yep, no problem. Like, awful stuff. You fat, you piece of shit, you, resign. And he actually cared about it. I was stunned at how he cared about his job.
I can understand people being disappointed, even upset, and saying, we don't want you as our leader for these reasons and what have you. That's fair game. You run for public office. Having said that, the comments and the hatred and the vitriol that you're describing, that people were spewing at a human being in distress. And that's disgusting. I mean, the man was in distress one way or the other. I mean, if an inmate in prison who is convicted and did the crime gets shot or gets stabbed, you take him to the infirmary and you don't stand over him and say, good for you, scumbag, you deserve this. So especially in that. So I agree with you. That's pretty disgusting. I hope you did kick that fucking protester who was screaming names at him. You probably did, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I wish I had, but he was a professional shit disturber, which is really like paid. I had this new understanding of how, and this is municipal politics. The stakes are pretty high for municipal politics. I was stunned. And Toronto is, they like to believe they're the center of the Canadian universe and stuff. And I was amazed at how much shit was going on for this one guy.
So fast forward ahead, you got this guy sober.
Yes. He never drank again.
What an accomplishment, or crack or drugs, right? I mean,
obviously he couldn't. And the way he would, he was a guy that was a very large appetite for. He did well, and he told me once. I said, you'd be cut some slack. And he said to me, he used to call me Frenchie all the time, and he'd say, Frenchie, I'm going down with the ship. And he knew it. He didn't blink at getting the worst cancer you can get. He didn't blink. He was just took it like a champ. I was amazed at how tough this guy was, and a kind person.
In many ways, though, man, you gave him those final years back, the service and work that you did.
Well, you know what I can do? And you're going to find this out too, is I can show you how this works, but I'm going to put everything in your, like, it's your job to do this. Because I always joke with people like, oh, what's going to happen when you're not there? The decisions are always going to be made by the person of concern. The person of concern is going to have to do that. But I helped them. And like, I know people that do my job that say, oh, I saved this one's life. I don't say it. And I have a pretty big ripple effect of the work I have. And it's something that people say to me, you know, well, oh no, Bob, I know I'm not supposed to tell you you saved my life. And I'm always like, no, you save your own life in here. Just like you build your own monument in life. You know, someone's going to have to help you. I'm able to change the trajectory of someone's life by my insights and my skill and my professionalism and how I push that toward. But ultimately, I always make sure that the person of concern knows these are going to be your choices, because I'm not going to be here. One of the best things in recovery is to ask someone, how are you acting when nobody's looking? It's a good question.
When we spoke, and you were watching our podcast and saw one of our other episodes, and you reached out and you said, hey, this looks pretty interesting. I thought your message was fantastic. I followed you online. I looked you up on some of your old Vice shows. You have huge social media following all over. And I'm like, this guy's freaking trippy. This, like, you're like out there. Like, I was watching you. Like, this is not your everyday guy. So I thought that would be really cool, especially right now with COVID. The numbers are through the roof with alcoholism and drug addiction going up. But then as you and I spoke, just getting to know each other and seeing if we're going to do this podcast or not, I threw out to you and said, you know what, man, why don't you walk me through your program for 30 days? What if I agree to give up booze for 30 days? And, you know, we'll touch base on that in a bit, because I've certainly had a couple of drinks once in a while. In fact, quite frankly, during this podcast, I reached over a couple of times. And if people look back at some of our older podcasts, which are only a couple months old, you'll see sometimes I have a styrofoam cup. Sometimes I didn't even bother. And it's not uncommon that it's got something else in it. And, you know, and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of that. I'm just saying that, you know, I said, hey, what the hell? But what I'm realizing today is I have my water and my Pellegrino. And when I was reaching over, I was also kind of like, Dana, where is my Casa Amigos? What the? And okay, today's day one of my sober challenge. So
day one of your abstinence. We're going to use that.
Absence.
The first thing I tell people, I go sometimes and people say, I've been sober now for 6 days. And I'm like, son of a bitch, you've never drawn a sober breath in your life. You're abstinent. And you, intent and purposes for 30 days will be abstinent, because sobriety is an achievement that comes with a little bit more than just putting a plug in the jug, as it were.
What does a sober coach do? You know, and then what do you do with Major League Baseball? How does that come into play?
Well, I think it's important to predicate. I work with a lot of professional athletes. What happens is baseball players get hurt a lot, so some of them have issues with you know, substances and stuff like that. And obviously with substances,
like pain pills and opioids for recovery and stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
It's shocking. Like back in the day, when a hockey player or a football player, you know, in the off season they worked at car lots and sold cars. You know, they started training 2 weeks before training camp. Now they're professional athletes. They work all year round to articulate their fitness and their level. Man, a lot of responsible agents and agencies that handle talent started realizing, hey, we need to get ahead of this, instead of it being another like, he was caught drunk driving, or, you know, some domestic abuse caused by liquor or whatever. A lot of agents started saying, we have to have the team. And in my case, I started doing cases before they ended up in the substance abuse policy. So there we're able to dictate where we're going to get the help. Getting them, I work with a couple of really small places that I can hide someone very easily in there. No one will ever know they were there. And we started doing work that way. And my job is to get someone sober. Well, sobriety happens with abstinence first. I'm not at liberty to tell you, it's shocking, the people that I work with. It's like, holy shit. And the other part is, How do you get them? Like, these guys aren't going to have a normal 45-day stay inpatient treatment. How do we fix this? How do we get it going faster and maximize the effect? There are some times where I check into, I use the Langham Hotel in Pasadena often, and rent out a cottage and bring in the doctors and bring in a whole team and work for, a small, very intense period of time. Leaving there, here's our treatment plan. Let's articulate it. What does that look like? Okay, we're going to have a companion with them for months, or, depending on what the varying needs are. There's a whole menu of goods and services.
And a companion is kind of like what you're really saying is someone who has to follow someone, is spending the time with them, because someone is in a state where they really can't be left alone, or they're going to drink or use or shoot up or snort. Like,
well, and any of the end game of addiction is you're living pretty solitary. You're living a very, you have your world. You might go out and work in it or do what you need to do, but you usually come home and it's just you and your misery. That's how you want to operate. And it's interesting that people used to think, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't live in a van down by the river. I don't drink out of a paper bag. I swear to God, I don't have a problem with alcohol. I remember being in rehab going, I came here for drugs. No problem. I'll sign off on the drugs, but I'm still going to drink. And they just looked and laughed at me. Okay, that's great. Somehow you can pick the menu.
Well, shit, I mean, 3 minutes after you and I spoke for the very first time, and again, I got an Instagram message from you, and you're like, hey, man, within like 2 seconds of just saying hi, and you asked me 2 questions, you go, you're a functioning alcoholic. I'm like, that. And you're like, so like everyone around here keeps asking me that based on, and I'm like, no, when I speak to Bob and we start going through this, I'll share my own thoughts. I go, but then again, I don't know that I'm right or wrong. I don't know most people are. All I can do is say, I'll be honest with anything that you answer or ask me. And then I'm curious at like 30 days from now, because yesterday we did this thing, we called it the confessional, where they just took an iPhone and asked me a bunch of questions to record like what I think of my lifestyle, my habits, my history with alcohol. I know there's certain things they asked me that I guarantee that you would disagree with me on. And a couple of times I would answer it and say, ooh, if you say that to Bob tomorrow, he's going to kick your ass. I'm like, hey, man, we're going to be authentic. I'll tell him everything. It doesn't mean I'm arguing with him, but I'm not an expert in this stuff. I just know what I think I know.
What I think I know is an amazingly safe place to end up. Hey, you know what? I'm not drinking out of a paper bag, so somehow I've been alleviated. Alcoholism or addiction that is negatively impacting your life can come in different forms. It can come in a very minor form, but every addiction, doesn't matter what you're addicted to, is a progressive illness. It's not a moral failing, but it's an illness, and it will continue to build upon, even if it's just, we're going to add a little bit here at the end of the year. Because people tell me, I don't drink. People want to tell me, I've only had 3 today. Like, fuck, I'm not on the clock. I'm not counting everyone's liquor. And it's amazing. Like, you can tell I've been at this long enough. Okay, this guy's going out of his way to tell me how good he is. Like, not that I really care. A social drinker is not going to tell me what he did or didn't drink. He's just going to be his own thing. Someone that's problem is like, do you think this guy knows? Do you think he knows my secret? Do you think he can see through me? And it's not like that.
You see people who go into rehab, especially celebrities or high profile people, after they get caught doing something really bad. And sometimes it will be for, alcohol, cocaine, and sex addiction, which kind of means you got caught on tape doing all 3 at the same time with people you're not supposed to even. And, my response was, hey, man, if you've ever done cocaine, it's fucking fun. You want to do a lot of it. So I get why people like to do cocaine. I get why people like to have a lot of sex. It's fun. People like having a lot of sex. But a lot of us, or most people, or many people, I don't know what the terminology is, come to a point where you say, okay, I like this. It's fun. It's amazing. But if I keep doing this, something really bad is going to happen to me or my family or other people. And they do stop. So where do you draw the line then between someone's choice or someone's not having a choice in that, if you're saying it's an addiction that took over? And I really want to know. I'm not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to answer first. In 1956, so if we're still arguing what happened in 1956, the American Medical Association said addiction is a disease. It is a complicated biochemical problem that is in your brain. You're born with it. So there's going to be a few factors that I like to tell people, but that would be the gene, which in my house, my mom's Irish, my dad's French Canadian. I never had a chance just in the gene part. But all joking apart, a complicated biochemical problem in my brain. It's factored by my family dynamic, my community, and my exposure. Those are the drivers, if you will, to addiction. But I'm not going to argue the science. It's irrefutable in my thing. And people say to me, well, it's not really an addiction, it's a choice. When you're no longer making that choice, because I know for me, at the end of my addiction, I quit. I came into this January 2nd, 2004. I had an overdose. I've been sober since. All right. I can tell you that I don't know how many times I said, tomorrow morning, starting over, new regime, not going to happen anymore. And that was happening every 15 minutes. I take a hit. I'm at this point, I'm injecting it. I'm into all kinds of lurid shit, but I'm alone. I'm spending most of my money on this. But this is how I was, because I had ended up in that part of addiction. Addiction can be different for different people. And let's also predicate that by looking at addictive tendencies. You can be, our alcohol and drugs are the two things we think of about addiction. There are loads of process addictions. So you hear about guys that go to rehab, and you know what? They stop drinking, they stop using drugs, and they come out and they gain 100 pounds because, wow, they've just replaced it with food. Your brain delivers norepinephrine. You know, when you're, oh, let me find that vein. Oh, the release. Or, oh God, I just need that one glass. Oh, glunk, 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 glunk. Oh, I feel that release. That's norepinephrine. Yeah. So you start chasing that. Well, we can do that with process addiction, gambling, gaming like Xbox and eating, sex and porn, two different ones. Some people like to watch, some people like to do. But if you're doing it and you're using it as a soothing mechanism, and that's what we're doing, we are soothing. So it's almost a self-medicator, how we use our drugs and our alcohol. But at some point, the tail is now wagging the dog, and it becomes an addiction. I heard it told early on by an old timer, said, once a cucumber turns into a pickle, you're not going back. So that was easy for me to understand. The irrefutable parts that I could not change was after 28 days, your brain, alcohol and marijuana, your brain's going to be functioning at around 99%. You're going to be much clearer. Your sleep is going to improve. Alcohol is a nasty drug. It's a solvent. It can really hurt your brain. If they invented it today, it would never be legal. It does a whole number on your brain and your internal organs. But asking me the addiction part, we're born with addictive quantities. I don't know. Did you like candy when you were a kid? Because ADD and sugar go hand in hand. Yes, please, give me more. And that's how I was. I did my first line of cocaine at 13 years of age. It was like $250 a gram. How does a 13-year-old make that happen? Doesn't matter. I did, because that's how unhealthy it was. And a lot of it was, I'm going to be known as Bob. Take it now, ask questions later, marry you. So I hung my hat on the personality. I wasn't strong at school. I was a pretty good athlete. I had really bad ADHD. Well, I'm born in 1965. They call that a behavioral problem. My favorite color is shiny. I joke about it all the time, but my favorite color is shiny. Anything that's sparkling, yes, please. Yeah. Look, a dog with a fluffy tail, squirrel. That's how I operate.
You said something a minute ago, which I think is really fascinating, and I want to kind of hit on that point from what I've experienced. And you said that you referred to alcohol as poison, and I agree with you, especially compared with other things. That's going to sound weird. I'm not in a position, nor am I an expert, to say that alcohol can ruin lives worse than crack or different things. But to your comment about how bad alcohol is and poison,
I can tell you, alcohol is the only thing that will kill you. It's nasty. And most of the interventionists and guys that work in our business will tell you, especially since we all have intimate relationships with alcohol, or at one point did, we all it's a real net. It does a number on your brain. It does a number on your organs. It does a number on a whole litany of things that it does to you and your soul. And then the questions I would ask you, like working with you, is I'm going to give you some homework, which is I want you to go and ask your mom and ask your dad and look back 3 generations on your side. Did Uncle Bill die when he was 28 years old because he was having a good time? No, Uncle Bill died as a fucking alcoholic, but we didn't call it that back then. We didn't look at mental illness like it was, we didn't look at mental illness as openly as we do today. So that sort of stuff makes it a lot more, that's called a genogram, looking back 3 generations in your family tree and looking at, and you start to see a picture already. And that, again, I'm only hitting the genetic part on that. The other part of the addiction to me is, I believe trauma is the gateway drug. In my case, I had a traumatic incident happen to me when I was 8. It happened, you know, like priest, and you know, I need to go on, and a learning difficulty. So this is what they call drip trauma over years. I was the baby of 6 kids. I grew up in my home. I could charge admission to Christmas at my house. I never heard my mom and dad argue with one another. They were in love till the day they died. I grew up with all that. Even with that, and I never went without anything. We grew up in a good neighborhood, but I had a problem at a young age, and I felt it. I felt less than. So name an alcoholic or any addict that doesn't have low self-esteem and they're self-centered as they move on through their addiction. And it's like, you know, you can't tell them anything because they have an aversion to the fucking truth. You know, people told me, well-intentioned people would tell me, you know, Bob, you might want to slow down. Fuck you. Fuck off. That's how I acted. And it was that.
I'm so sorry, by the way, that you went through that at such a young age, what you're referencing.
Well, what's interesting is even though I get sober, I'm 10 years into my sobriety, and I'm like, man, I can't, the trauma train is on the track. And I haven't had a drink in 10 years. And I'm like, why am I getting, this is PTSD. What's this happening to me? Why is it happening? Because I still owning it and saying it happened, or giving it the honoring this thing, this horrible trauma, honoring it and processing it and really going through it takes time, it takes effort. It will not go away. People say, oh yeah, that happened to me. Like, it's like, yeah, I got gang raped, and oh, it's fine. It just happened. I owned it. It's okay. No. You need to really go through that sort of shit to make you feel good and to unburden yourself. There isn't an amount of yoga in the world that's going to get you away from that pain. And I work with these highly successful, driven human beings, these guys that are extremely driven. They've built empires, and you know, they had a shitty dad that didn't give them enough love, or they had there's always some trauma, and they're like, I have everything and I have nothing at the same time. And I'm like, yep, that's pretty well something I see regularly. Like on the outside looking in, we'd go, you know what, man, this guy's he's got a good, why is he such a dick? Why is he so short with people? Because he fucking hates himself. You know, that's why. It's not that complicated, but we get through it, and you learn that. I just find it really interesting. And I'm talking to you as the wheelhouse of my business, and I see so much disingenuous male vulnerability to that. Oh, for fuck's sake, stop. That might work with the chicks, but it's not going to work with me, you know? And people don't care. They don't care about how they feel. They're just like, they'll just keep pushing the bad feeling. And the further you get away from the bad feeling without processing it, the harder it's going to be to deal with it.
You're bringing up some interesting points, Bob. This is going to be an interesting month.
I'm going to make you fucking cry. I'm going to make you cry.
You better have a sledgehammer, but you know, and
no, it won't be needed.
Well, here's what our commitment, or at least my commitment, has been to everyone here at our team, and just so you know how seriously we're taking it. Is one, this morning I went to my doctor, who's an internist and a extremely skilled physician. He's been seeing me for years, and told him what we were doing, and we videotaped it, and he is running an entire lab of blood work and panels, and even did things for pancreas, liver, like when we told him specifically
enzymes,
top to bottom, everything.
Good.
And then I've, besides not taking any alcohol for 30 days, and you made clear that anything that is not alcoholic but would be on the no list also. And I'm not saying, you know, I took a photo yesterday, or at the end of the day, because my belief is about a year ago, and I did stop drinking for a bit. The physical changes were so dramatic, so fast, and I did not stop. I did not change anything about my eating or diet. I did not change my exercise, meaning I did not increase it or decrease. I just stopped drinking. And the transformations I saw physically were so tremendous, and people coming up regularly. So I took a photo this time, and we're going to do another photo in 30 days. And then every day I've committed to the team here that I'm going to shoot a selfie video, quick little update of how I'm feeling, what's going on, good, bad, or ugly, and that I wouldn't hide or lie. They all know they can come up to me at any time over the next 30 days and ask me anything they want. At 30 days, when we're done, I'm going to do blood work all over again, and my physician's going to review the results. So we're going to look at it from the physical appearance of photos. We're going to look at it from the medical side of a detailed panel over 30 days. And then obviously you and I are going to speak again in 30 days, and then talk about all the other parts.
But I also have another surprise for you that you don't know, but I have spoken to your staff about, is that on Monday, the good people at SoberLink are going to arrive with a device that is a compliance meter. that you will blow into with that facial recognition software. It's they're out of Huntington Beach, California. It's a great thing, and you will blow into twice a day, and it gets a report. It'll be between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. It's a perfect chain link. Right?
My staff knows about this.
Yes, I told them today, but I called them and they were happy to help.
Tracker.
Yeah,
they have a sober breathing thing that arrives here on Monday that he worked out.
The polite word is a compliance meter.
That sounds like something you would do, and
Yep.
That is like interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm planning to comply. I'm planning to comply, but.
And if you miss a test, I just want you to know how the SoberLink's a wonderful tool. We often use it with the court system for people that need to gain some trust with their families or trust with their spouses if they're getting through divorces. Like we set the times, whatever they can be any time, but every 12 hours. So it's super sensitive. If you have mouthwash and you blow into it, you will fail that test. It will say mouthwash and it'll give you 20 minutes to reblow and it should be clear. If it's alcohol, it's highly, you can't cheat this test at every 12 hours. It's impossible. You're not going to beat it, So that's what we're going to do. I'm helping you. You got to trust me. I'm helping you.
Yeah, I mean, these fuckers wheeled my bar card out of my office earlier today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, what the? I mean, looking is illegal.
It's not, but if you sit again, I'm using this really, if you sit in a barber chair long enough, you're going to get a fucking haircut. So why would you want that liquor in your room?
I'm 48. When people say, do you have a drinking problem? And I said to you, in my opinion, absolutely not. But to me, I define that as I don't drink and drive. I don't get in fights. I don't even go to clubs or bars and stuff. I worked in bars and clubs a ton of years as a kid. But on paper, if you define how many drinks someone has a day, and if you're being honest about it, on paper, it definitely shows something different. And so, there's that side of it. And being 48, and I have, 4 kids, all very small and young, I do come to say to myself, okay, what would be different in life again? And last year was a window where I didn't drink for 90 days. But I say to people, I loved the mornings and I hated fucking evenings, even day 89 and day 90. I loved waking up feeling clear. I saw the difference immediately and every day. I felt great. I looked great. My energy level, all this stuff. And around 4 or 5 o'clock every afternoon, especially work, and I thrive on stress. I always say I love chaos. I do. Chaos drives me. I love having my back against the wall. Sometimes I'll let myself get to that position, not openly, intentionally, but I'm realizing these things because I love coming out swinging. And you do realize, as shit about yourself that is like, that's kind of weird.
It's also exhausting. You're the father of 4 young kids. It's getting kind of tired. And the scary part to me is that you're saying, at 5 o'clock, I'm getting the twitch. My eyes moving. I'm getting the twitch. You know what, Drew? I'm giving you the rope. But by the way, and I feel it's safe to tell you as well, on Monday, we'll also set a time that you're going to speak to an addiction therapist for the first time in your life. My girl that handles you, who also is in California. She will take care of you. Her name's Tasha. She's going to do good work with you, but she's going to ask you questions that are going to be, we've been to therapy before, and people say, oh, we tried therapy, it didn't work. I tell people, did you go to an addiction therapist? They're like, no, I went to a family therapist. I said, hey, did you bring your car to a Chinese restaurant to get repaired? Because that's what you're doing here. And they're like, oh. So this girl's going to talk to you. Again, I've made it all possible. I did some homework here. And she's going to talk to you, and she's going to meander, and you're going to be like, Jesus Christ, she's asking some pointed questions. Very passive. Yeah.
But did you outsource me, Bob? Did you already outsource me to someone else?
No, but I'm not a clinician. I bring this together. I'm going to hit you with the whole, we're going to do 30 days and we're going to see if at this time, unlike when you did 90 days, this time we're going to work a few angles to look at the whys. And at 5 o'clock, I want to know why you want to drink, why you think it would be easier, why you love chaos,
So the next 30 days, I'm essentially going to be doing the same program that anyone else, when you're walking people, taking them through, I'm going through
with
that.
With the executives that don't want to jump on the sword completely, but they know they have a problem. And I start changing the way they're thinking, because I'm going to have a proper clinician that's going to talk to you about addiction and how you look and ask you questions. Because if I'm a sobriety coach and I don't have a crackerjack therapist backing my shit, my clinical backside up, I'm an idiot at my job. There's a lot of people that call themselves sobriety coach because they're good at AA. That's not what I fucking do. All right. My program is my business. What I'm good at is showing a guy like you that, hey man, the alcohol's not really helping me. I can become better at A, B, C, and D, and being much more in touch with that. I'm a hell of a lot better human than I was 16 and a half years ago.
Yeah, and you know what happens? This is the reality. You must hear this all the time, I'm guessing. But if you look around, and all of the people in your world are pretty much very similar in their habits and style and lifestyle, and that really is something. And I'm not making an excuse, because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't say, hey, I would, like a little more of an understanding and process and control. Why did I have that third or fourth or fifth or sixth? Why didn't I just have a glass of wine with dinner? And I will say that when I hear people say that, oh, we shared a glass of wine, I'm like, oh, you like, I mean, my wife always knew not to share a glass of wine with me, because she'd get like 2 drops to play a game.
Well,
A
normal drinker, like in the recovery, if you're in AA rooms and people say, I was out last night, and now they're in recovery, and can you believe, like, my brother, he left at least like 3 ounces of wine in his glass. Who does that? A normal drinker. Who doesn't do that? Me. The alcoholic is like, are you going to finish that? I'm going to finish everything at the table. Or usually it's like, as a guy, I was like, we're not going home yet. Come on, we're going out. My girlfriends would be like, what are you doing? No, we can go one more place. I know a place. And it was this constant one. I have to stay out longer. And, we're going to live forever. No, you're not. Because in the morning, gravity is going to take place, and you're going to feel like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. And you have young kids. There are demands that you need to make it. The bell tolls, and in the hangover, it's not a good bell tolling. You feel like crap.
Yeah, it's a consideration. You want to be the best parent, but you also tell yourself, and I hear this all the time from moms, dads, everything is, yeah, but if I can be a little more relaxed, if I de-stress, I'm a better parent. And I'm not making that point. Again, I wouldn't, I'm just saying that I understand the logic behind that. If I have a drink or two to unwind, I'll be more relaxed. I don't really think that works in practicality over the long run. I don't believe it, but I understand how all of us can fall into that and tell ourselves that and believe that.
Yes. It's all I need it's just going to take the edge off until it's not, it's like to be with yourself and have your genuine self. Your genuine self means there's no mind altering substance. Your genuine self means to be the guy that, you made the reference about character. The definition is how you're acting when nobody's looking. The same thing is, do your parent, you have beautiful children. I've seen you post lovely pictures and they're high energy. And you're going to tell me that when you don't have your A game, because you've anesthetized the night before and like, that I'm in third gear and I'm going uphill and the clutch is fading fast, because as you get older, you can't outrun gravity. I've never been bored since I got sober. It's never been a boring time. I go to do a lot of interesting things. It's going to change the way you look at stuff when you really start to see the reward to the risk of the rewarder, if you will. How much am I really getting from this? Like you just said, that what I call ritualistic drinking. I just need to take that one to get home. How much am I getting out of it?
I think that's a fair word. And what's funny is when you use the word functioning alcoholic, I shot right back the other day and was like, but when you say ritualistic drinking, I don't argue that with you. So isn't that is an interesting point. I'm trying to be open-minded, at least, that they probably are the same exact thing, but when you use a different word, and it's a term I don't like because it has a negative stigmatism, how I reacted to it. And I'm like, man, it's lucky we're on Zoom or I would kick your Canadian ass. And you're like, yeah, bring it. No, it's just, what do you think about, and you brought it up, I'm curious, because I hear a lot of mixed things about AA.
AA is not a treatment program. It is a fellowship. What are you going to meet there is like-minded people that understand, there's power in the collective experience. But when people think that I go there and it's group therapy, no, it's not. It's a fucking fellowship. There's no professional help in there. And I got a whole bunch of my greatest friends. Some of my greatest friends I've met there, and I've learned how to to be with myself. And I remember thinking early in my recovery, I went to sober living in Miami Beach, and it came over me. I was 39. I had my 39th birthday. I've been in rehab, and I was like, these guys are happy. It was so foreign to me. I was like, they're not drinking. They're having like a lovely Sunday afternoon with no alcohol involved. It's beautiful. I've been open about my recovery because I'm not ashamed of being an alcoholic and an addict. It doesn't shame me. I had a problem. I took care of it. I continue to take care of it because the ongoing process is I have a reprieve today. I have today to act well, and then tomorrow I'm going to string another day together. It really is. That's all it is. Why don't we just get to start very slowly and very confidently? Only thing you have to do is be honest with me. That's it. Cravings last very small amounts of time, and you're going to understand that we're going to discover a lot of new things because you have had a 90-day period of abstinence, but I'm going to get you to understand stuff, and you're going to discover shit in the next 30 days that you did not know were happening. I can tell you that everyone I've spoken to in your sphere loves you. And I think that is like, you're not the boss that's an asshole. They're like, hey, we really love him. I hope we'll see where this takes. I don't think they're overly concerned, but I think people are like, maybe it's time. And maybe you should start saying that your relationship, it doesn't have to be a big production. Oh my God, I'm going to quit drinking. It's just for today. Give yourself a chance and let's look at this.
You definitely have a unique approach on everything, even the way you talk. I love it. I'm thrilled that we're doing this together. So I will be, you and I will be in touch ongoing regularly, and we'll take it from there, man. But I'm looking forward to this.
Welcome to early recovery, and that's all you have to do. You have to wake up every morning and say, it's not happening today. I'm not drinking, and go on from there. Don't overthink it. Don't move on. No longer an option is having alcohol.
All right, this is it. Hit subscribe, follow along. I could use the extra help and the support. Not going to lie about it because just got real. I'm officially starting my 30 days right now. Bob is on my ass. He's got a team of people that are on my ass. He's got a fucking breathalyzer showing up at the office for me to be tested every day. So hit subscribe, join me, support me, leave me a note, and I will see you at 30 days.